everyone, welcome back to Michelle Reads and Vlogs, and today we are going to talk about the 9 books that I read in December. So this is going to be a bit of a strange reading wrap up because December's the first month that I've not done a TBR on here, and what happened is I read quite a lot at the beginning of the month and then my health just took a nosedive around halfway through December. I was not functioning as a human being anymore, to put it bluntly, so I think I thought that this wrap up would include a lot of books, different books that I didn't read. I thought I'd get quite a bit of Christmas reading done and maybe catch up on a couple of like the larger fantasy books that I've been wanting to read, and it's just not happened. So what's ended up happening this month is I have read a total of 9 books. Out of those, 4 were audiobooks, 1 was an ebook, and 4 were physical reads. In total, I read 1,308 pages. It might seem a bit low, and that's because of the audiobooks. So I take the page count off of Goodreads. So a lot of the audiobooks will say like 3 pages, 5 pages, because of course they're not counting the pages in a physical book, and I'm totally fine with that. I appreciate that listening to a book through audio is completely different than reading. And with the ratings, I read 1 5-star book, 7 4-star books, and 1 2-star book. So a little bit random for me. Normally there's a bit more of a spread over 5, 4 and 3. So strange that nearly every book I read was a 4-star, but let's get into them. So the first book that I listened to in December was All Systems Red by Martha Wells, and this was an audiobook. So this is the first book in the Murderbot, I was about to say trilogy, but series by Martha Wells. They're quite short books. They're sci-fi, science fiction. They focus on this Murderbot who is there on kind of like a mission, and his mission with these people in this spaceship is to basically keep them safe. And he's a Murderbot, so he's not like a true living being, but we find out a lot more about them and what happens in this first book, and I can't really say much because I don't want to spoil it, but it was really enjoyable. I would say even for people who don't really like sci-fi, maybe give this series a go to kind of see if you like it and to get into it. It was a very short book, which on the day that I listened to it, it was just kind of what I needed. I was like, I just need something short and that I'm going to enjoy and that I don't really have to think about kind of too much. And yeah, I really liked it. It was on Audible and it actually was a free listen. I didn't have to use a credit towards it. And I've realised that Audible do this a lot with series. They give you the first one for free, and then of course if you enjoy it, you're then going to spend your credits or your money on the rest of the series, which is exactly what happened in Red Rising. I didn't pay for that first book and then I've bought the rest of them with my credits since. So yeah, it was a good book and I am definitely going to continue with that series. And I think I said maybe I didn't 4 stars for that one. I did really enjoy it. The second book that I read in December was Spy Family Volume 2. So this is a manga series that follows a man who is a undercover spy, and for this particular mission he needs a family. So he needs to get access to these people, and the only way he can do it is through the private school that their child goes to. So he goes and finds this child to be his daughter, which sounds random, but it's not in the book. It's good. And what he doesn't know is that this little girl is actually a telepath. And still in this book, he does not know this. So she knows that he's a spy because she can read his mind. He does not know that she's a telepath. And also in the first book, he finds someone to be his wife or act as his wife. And he doesn't know that she is actually an assassin. She doesn't know that he's a spy. She doesn't know the daughter's a telepath, but obviously the telepath knows that the mom is an assassin. So it's very cute, it's very fun. I really enjoyed the second volume. I gave this is my 5-star read of the month. And yeah, I'm definitely going to carry on with these. I really enjoyed it. I still don't know if manga's going to be, manga is going to be a massive kind of thing for me. I know I do like a variety of different genres and reads, but I'm going to continue with this one and maybe just kind of take it easy. I can't see myself reading like 10 mangas a month. I don't really think that's me, but I think occasionally if you can find a good one, yeah, it was really good. I really enjoyed that. So 5 stars. The next book that I read was Life, Loss and Puffins by Catherine Ryan Hyde. And this was one of the books that I chose on NetGalley. So I've joined NetGalley to start reviewing books. And because I'm kind of building up my profile, I've put in for a lot of kind of the bigger books, but at this point hadn't been accepted. I have since, so that's quite exciting. But this one, out of the kind of read now books, it just kind of appealed. I thought the cover was really interesting and I liked the kind of synopsis, so I thought, why not? Let's give it a go. And I'm so glad I did. This was such a good book. I gave it 4 stars. It's about a young girl, I think she's about 13, and she's very academically gifted. So she is sent to go to a university where they can help her to learn more, because she's kind of gone past what her school can teach her, and she has to live with a kind of, not a foster family, but like a carer family close to the university, because it's not near to where her mom lives. And I can't really say the next thing because it's going to be a spoiler, but things happen while she's there. And she also, in the carer family, she meets the son of the woman who owns the house, and he is also starting university, but a different university, because he's not quite as academically gifted as she is. But he's a really cool person. He's quite alternative, you know, he wears a lot of makeup. So I don't know if he's kind of like gender fluid, or they don't really talk much about his kind of sexuality and his labels. It's just kind of known that he is what society deems as different, but she really looks up to him, and as a friend, they're very much on kind of the same level, not necessarily kind of with this academic ability, but their conversational intellect. Like, he asks really good questions that get her thinking, and they have these discussions that she's basically not been able to have with another person before. So they form this friendship, and then things happen and they go on an adventure. And it sounds a bit weird because he is older than her, and it is obviously older male, younger female, and I don't know if I felt a little bit uneasy with it to begin with, but it is very much mentioned that there's nothing kind of romantically there. It's friendship the whole way through. And we get to see the development of this friendship. And I was really glad of the part at the end where they kind of like flashed forward into the future and said where they are now. I thought it was really good. It was really heartwarming. I think it felt like I went on the adventure with them. So I just really enjoyed it. So that was called Life, Loss and Puffins by Catherine Ryan Hyde. And I would recommend it, even though it's not a popular book. I think if you're in the mood for adventure and you like travel and adventure, then it's one to read. It was good. I'm going to talk about the next 2 books together because they are Iron Gold by Pierce Brown, which is book 4 of the Red Rising series, and Dark Age by Pierce Brown, which is book 5 in the Red Rising series. So I'm kind of classifying these together. I listened to them on audio in very quick succession. I was hooked. Even after the 5th one, I started the 6th one, and then that's when I kind of started going downhill with my health a bit, and I haven't really listened to it since. But yeah, I was absolutely gripped. I've given both 4 stars. Can't really say much about the synopsis for this one, because if you're thinking of starting book 1, it's going to completely ruin the whole series for you. But book 1, Red Rising, we are in a world in the future. So our world, but many years in the future, where we are looking at basically colonizing other planets in the solar system. So we have this group on Mars who are mining, and we've got this color cast system. So people have almost developed depending on kind of different evolutionary ways, and different colours have different ways that their bodies and their minds are built for the work that they do. So for example, there are medical people who I think are yellows, there's blues who are all about technology, and we've got the reds who are in book 1 on Mars in the mines mining for a precious substance called helium-3, which is basically going to help humanity to terraform all of the planets and the moons. At the very top we've got the golds, and they're the people who are very intelligent, and they're the people who are basically in charge. And what we see is Darrow, who is a red, so he's at the very bottom of this colour cast system. He's a miner, and he is taken from the reds to start a rebellion. So to basically find out what's really happening in this world, that the Reds are in slavery, and to start doing something about it, to rebel against the Golds. These books, they go in so many different directions. It's kind of insane, but really good. So if you're into your sci-fi and that sounds like something you'd like, maybe give it a go. But yeah, I can't really talk about books 4 and 5, so I'm sorry. If anyone's read them and wants to discuss, just, send me a message and we'll talk about them in more detail. The next book was one of my most anticipated reads for kind of autumn and winter, and that was Checkmate by Ali Hazelwood. So this is a YA romance set around the world of chess. So we have got this young girl, I forget their names every time, Mallory. So she played a lot of chess when she was much younger, especially with her dad, who was the person who kind of taught her and coached her. And then things happened, it kind of pulled the family apart and she gave up. Fast forward a few years later, she's an older teenager. She goes and plays in a charity tournament because her friend asks her to and kind of bullies her into it. In that tournament, she ends up beating one of the top chess players in the world. What's his name? Nolan? I think it's Nolan. Yeah, Nolan. After that, he wants a rematch. He wants to play her again to try and win because he's one of the best in the world and she's kind of a nobody. Although she doesn't really want to go back into chess, circumstances happen and she kind of gets forced back into the chess world. I did enjoy this and I gave it a 4-star. What I would say is that there were some problematic parts to this story that just didn't sit well for me. So to get her back into the chess world, I feel like Ali Hazelwood really needed to kind of give her this reason to have to get back into it. So she's left school. She has a mother who's got a chronic illness. Dad's not around anymore. She's got 2 younger teenage sisters and she is basically keeping everything together for everyone. What I really didn't like was the attitude of the middle sister. The older sister, Mallory, is trying to keep everything together. She's working her absolute backside off for her family. And the middle sister at one point is like, well, you can't cancel my skating fees because that will be like the end of the world for me. I am such a practical person that I am like, why is she burdened with all of this? Why has she taken all of this responsibility on her shoulders? I know that it's because she's kind of like the adult child, but the one in the middle is only about 4 years younger than her. Surely she is old enough to have it explained to her that you're old enough to know the situation here, that we can't even afford our bills and you want your money for your skating and you're acting like a little brat. It's a difficult one because I understand that Ali Hazelwood needed to do all these things to drive the story, to get Mallory back into chess where she can earn some money to support her family. So I kind of get why she did it. But the attitude of the kid just really infuriated me. But it was a minor part of the story. As I said, I've given the book 4 stars, so it can't have annoyed me that much or else I would have knocked it down to 3. If you've read this, kind of let me know if you agree with kind of the writing there and the situation. But I think it's just one of those things that just didn't gel well with me. But anyway, and once we got past that and she was in the chess world, I loved everything else to do with this book. And I loved the ending. I thought it was absolutely amazing. It's actually my first Ali Hazelwood, which is crazy because obviously she writes all these STEM romances and I am a science teacher. I love STEM. I love anything academic. So I'm like, why have I not picked them up? They're all on my wish list. But yeah, I really enjoyed this. So 4 stars for this one. Next, we've got Leave the World Behind by Rumaan Alam. And this was one of the books that was sent to me in the Book Bar Book Club. So I am a part of the Book Bar Book Club. It's really difficult to say. Book Bar is a bookshop down in London in Islington where it's a bar. So you can get a glass of wine and a book and sit and read, or you can get coffee. You don't have to drink alcohol whilst you're there. They do a book club every month and they send the books out because obviously I do not live in London. I live in the West Midlands. You get to read the book and then at the end of the month you can send any questions you've got in to Book Bar and they do an interview with the author which you can have access to if you've paid to be a part of the book club. I really like the picks that they send. I read such diverse books that I probably wouldn't have picked up otherwise, and this was one of them. So this is interesting as well because I've wanted to read this book for a while, and I'd got it kind of targeted as I want to read this in December, and then Netflix had a show called Leave the World Behind, and I saw a clip of it on, I don't even know if it was like Facebook or Instagram or something. It was the part where the ocean liner comes in at the beach, and I was like, oh wow, this looks really good. You know, I love an end of the world dystopian. I kind of watched the first scene on this Netflix program and then looked over. I'd got this book, I'd been carrying it around for a couple of days, and it was on my side in my kitchen, and I went, oh, I meant to be reading the book that this Netflix program is based on. So I read the book and then I watched the Netflix program. I read this, I don't know what they call it when you both read along and listen to the audio. So I've classed it as a physical read because I did read it with my eyeballs, but I did listen to the audio at the same time, which was a really good experience. I would definitely do that again, especially because I wasn't feeling great. So I didn't really have the brain power to kind of get into heavy books, but yeah, so I did this one. Unfortunately, this was my 2-star read for the month. I just didn't enjoy it. I liked the basic outline of the plot and the story, but the writing just wasn't for me. There was so much description in this. Like, I'm all for a bit of description, but it was too much. And then I watched the Netflix version, and almost the way that they've produced it and directed it, it's the same. It's very slow. They focus on all of these details. And I'm like, I can see exactly why they've done that after having just read this. So I can see why some people would like it, but yeah, unfortunately not for me. I've not talked about the synopsis for this one, have I? So there's a family, they are from New York, and last minute they decide, let's go out of the city kind of to, I don't know what you'd call it, like the suburbs, like less than the suburbs, like near to New York, where they're going to rent a house for a few days just to have a bit of a break and a holiday. But whilst they're at this house, another couple turns up. They just knock on the door and they're like, oh, hey, this is a little bit random, but you're staying in our house. We're the owners. You're renting it from us. We were about to drive back into the city when all of the electricity went out and weird things are happening. So they decided not to drive back to their city apartment. Instead, they decided to drive out to their house kind of in the country. And from there, loads of other weird things happen. So like the phones all disconnect. They get some weird kind of messages through to say, like hazard messages, like something's going on, but they don't really say anything, and all the TVs turn off and they've got no communication. It was interesting, but as I said, I think the TV show, the Netflix version, went along a lot better than this in terms of, with the book, it was a bit more of a, are we just being a little bit like kind of sensitive, over the top, like are we hypochondriacs here? Whereas in the Netflix version, weird stuff happened and there was kind of more explanation behind it. So yeah, it was okay, but I'm saying that to be nice. Yeah, it wasn't for me, unfortunately. Book 8 was A Christmas Carol by Charles Dickens, and I listened to this on audio, which was read by Hugh Grant. And I have never read A Christmas Carol. I've watched the Muppets version, which I absolutely love, but I've never read the book. And in school, it is like a GCSE English thing that most students in the UK do now read A Christmas Carol. So even over all the years that I've been teaching, all of my students have been reading it in their English classes. I just never have. And I thought, you know what? Let's get into the Christmas spirit. I still wasn't feeling well at this point, so I didn't want to physically read it, so I went on audio and I really enjoyed it. Obviously, I know the basic story because of A Muppet's Christmas Carol, but the book itself I thought was brilliant. I really enjoyed the writing of it. I really enjoyed the narration, and I'm glad that I gave it a go. It was a bit of a strange one because I didn't really want to rate it because of it being a classic. It's a bit like memoirs. Like, how do you rate a memoir? It's somebody's life. And again, I suppose you could say that about any book. It's somebody's piece of work, their art. But I gave it 4 stars in the end. I did really enjoy it, but am I going to listen to it every year? Probably not. So yeah, 4 stars. I haven't talked about the synopsis again. I think that's probably because I'm assuming that most people know what A Christmas Carol is about, whether you've watched a film version of it or read the book. So in A Christmas Carol, we have a character called Scrooge who is back in like Victorian times. He is a bit of a horrible man. He owns a company. I think they do like finances and mortgages and things. He gives no grace to his employees or to his customers. It's all about making money, and there's no kind of like real happiness in his life. He's got no desire to be happy. He's got no desire to share happiness or to make other people happy. And then what happens is the 3 ghosts appear to him, or a spirit appears to him and says he's going to be visited by 3 ghosts of Christmas past, present and future. It really shows him kind of a look on his life. It makes him look back on his life, at the present of his life and what the future of his life could be. And that's what happens. And then he can obviously go back to current day times and decide how he wants to continue living his life. The final book of December and of the year as a whole is Antarctica by Claire Keegan. And this is a really interesting one because Waterstones really pushed this with this cover. So of course your kind of immediate thought is, oh, it's a new book. But of course she only released a new book a few months ago. And what this actually is her first ever book that was published in like 1999/2000, and it is a collection of short stories. And I don't know why it's been republished or why Waterstones were pushing it, but I'm really glad that they did because I really enjoyed it. I also think this cover is beautiful. So cute. And you've got it on the side there, and you've got this collection of short stories, and it's very Claire Keegan, as in we are looking at kind of human lives, things that humans do in their life and why. And we follow so many different types of people, mostly between Ireland and the US, and that is completely kind of understandable where you look at Claire Keegan and where she studied, her background, the types of kind of people and cultures she'll be able to write about. But what's amazing is she really kind of gets the story and the narrative of those individual people. You almost can't believe that it's her writing 2 different stories. They're each so unique, and the voice that they're told in is so unique. But she really gets her characters, and we look at the reasons of why people do things. So the first 2 stories in here both follow the trope of cheating, which I really struggle to read. It's not a trope that I really enjoy, but what I like here is kind of like we're getting the reasons why these characters are doing these and what happens within their story to these people. It's never kind of just straightforward. She just grips me. She grips me. I find it so easy to read her work. There's quite a few short stories in here, but there were 2 in particular that stood out. So there was a story called Men and Women, which I really enjoyed. It was about a young girl in Ireland, and it's set around Christmas and New Year's, and it tells us of her family, her mom and dad and her brother, and we really look at the differences between the genders and the gender inequality that they have in this family. So what is expected of her compared to her slightly older brother, what her mom does versus what her dad does. And it's almost her as kind of an older child, maybe a younger teenager, and her eyes being opened to the inequality of it. It just made me angry. It made me angry for her. It made me angry for all women who experience gender inequality. I just thought that Claire Keegan hit the nail on the head with it. It's definitely one of the short stories that I would revisit and reread 100%. And then the second one that I really enjoyed was actually the one just after that as well, which was called Sisters. So we've got, again, it's kind of inequality. We've got these 2 sisters. They are kind of in their 50s at the point of the story being told. The one sister is the less beautiful one. It's told from her perspective. She is the one who stayed at home in Ireland, cared for their elderly father until he passed away. And then at that point, she was too old to really start a family of her own. And the other sister, who is like the more beautiful one, which talks about her long blonde hair and people gravitate towards her. Like if she walks in the room, they stop talking to the first sister and they start talking to the second one. And her and her children turn up at the house in Ireland for summer without the sister's husband, and they basically take advantage of the first sister. They just treat it like their home. Again, the first sister, she does all the work, she feeds them, it's all out of her own pocket. She is poor to begin with, so she has to budget everything, which she's happy with. But then the other sister and her kids come along, they don't help, they're ungrateful, and they basically eat all of her funds without contributing and without discussing anything as if it's expected. Again, the inequality. Maybe I'm seeing the theme of what I enjoy in stories here. Yeah, it made me angry for her, for the older sister, and I thought the ending was brilliant. Absolutely brilliant. So those two, I don't even really ever draw in books, and I've marked them on the contents page because they were the best ones. I would definitely revisit them again. So those are the 9 books that I read in December. As I said, it's a bit of a strange one because I've only got these 4 physical ones and they're very short. I feel like I read a lot of audiobooks or listened to a lot of audiobooks in December. And as I said, it's just not what I expected. But I suppose that's life, isn't it? We just have to get on with things the way that we're dealt. I'm still happy with the books that I read. As I said, reading 7 4-star reads is really good. I'm really happy with that. And let's see what we get into in January, which means I need to start thinking about a January TBR. It is the 31st. Today is literally the end of December. So I think the plan going forward is I'm going to do this 24 and 24. So pick 24 books I want to read over 2024 and then make my January TBR with some of that in mind, which is exciting. So thank you very much. If you've got to this point, thank you for listening the whole way through. I know I kind of rambled on a little bit at certain points. I think this is my chronic fatigue as well. I almost forget where my thoughts are going and I either say too little or too much. It just is what it is. And I get really tired at this point in filming. Like in the first 10 minutes, I feel like I'm full of energy and I'm like, I want to talk about books. And then by this point, I'm like, what on earth am I thinking? Who am I? Yeah, so thank you so much for watching to this point. As usual, I will drop affiliate links for all of the books mentioned down below in the video description. That just means that if you purchase through that link, it costs you no more than if you were purchasing out of the link, but I do make a small commission off the sale, which, you know, really helps me and the channel. If you liked the video, please hit like. And if you want to see more from me, think about subscribing. Other than that, I hope you're all well. I hope you've all had a brilliant December and a brilliant reading month. And I look forward to seeing you all in the new year, ready for a fresh start, a fresh goal on Goodreads. And I can't wait to see what the next year brings. Have a great evening, everyone. Bye.